Olympic Corner update. The IOC and Tokyo 2020 remain adamant the Games will go ahead as planned. However, an upturn in the health situation increases the likelihood of that happening. Japan's vaccine minister Taro Kono has admitted he has no idea how many people would be vaccinated in the country ahead of the Games. While the IOC and Tokyo 2020 have stressed that vaccines will not be a silver bullet for the Games, national Olympic committees have been encouraged to seek vaccinations for their athletes and to work with the World Health Organization to assist those struggling to access them. Athletes in some countries have already been vaccinated, while other NOCs have said they will wait for other priority groups before seeking vaccines for their competitors. That's it for today's Olympic feature. Remember to watch the SportsMax Zone for your daily Olympic updates.
Yeah, what a nice segue into this segment, because users of social media have rounded on the government in Jamaica for approving the staging of a charity road race on the streets of the corporate area, sponsored by a corporate giant, at a time when there are severe restrictions on public gatherings. The government was accused of hypocrisy and for setting double standards, especially given that organized sport, except horse racing, have been on ice since March last year, despite the efforts of those organizing the Sagicor Sigma Corporate Run to ensure able-bodied and wheelchair competitors competed in a socially distant manner. That didn't neutralize the criticism of those who felt such an event should never have been sanctioned by the Andrew Holness administration. This is what people have been saying. Madame Roar looks like another summer under lockdown because apparently COVID takes a break for Sigma Run. Proud Jamaicans, no matter what you say, this was straight up carelessness. Since this is about health, what COVID no keep on a charity? This society is so messed up. Zaria, I counted 3 masks. I have to laugh. Kiefer Deno, very interesting. I'm interested to know what criteria must be met for an event of this magnitude or any magnitude to be held during this pandemic. Coronavirus says the government doesn't even have the decency to respond to requests for track and field events to be held, but allowed this. Nathaniel Wint, Andrew Holness JM, this is unacceptable, tagging the Prime Minister in that tweet. Damani Gardner, so unfair to student athletes who could potentially improve their standard of living via scholarships, but because they have no platform to showcase their talent, champs, they are stuck with the optics of this. D says, so Mr. Prime Minister and Health Minister, this not a gathering of 10 people? How was this green lighted? They were able to raise 48 million and I'm sure it's not from that 100 people, so was this necessary? And JB says, party, champs, M Cup, Manning Cup, D Cup, the Costa Cup, etc. Now keep, but this can? Well, Sagicor says all protocols set down by the Ministry of Health and Wellness were strictly adhered to as it defended its corner. We did reach out to the Ministry of Health and Wellness from about after 8 a.m. in Jamaica this morning, speaking with the communications department, asking them to I'll ask the minister to speak with us on the show about this issue. Today is cabinet day in Jamaica, so it was always going to be a tough ask to get the minister because cabinet meetings run from perhaps 10 a.m. in the morning until late afternoon, so we are unsuccessful there. Then we reached out to the opposition spokesperson on sport, Senator Gabriel Morris. We haven't gotten a response to an invitation to have a discussion with us, with this being the topic. So nobody from either side of the parliamentary divide available to speak with us on this matter. We're turning to a man of sport, Leighton Levy, senior writer at SportsMax.tv and the man in charge of online for the moment. Leighton, welcome. Good afternoon.
Hi guys, how are you doing?
We're good. So what was your time in the Sigma Sagicor Run on Sunday?
I wasn't doing Sagicor on Sunday, George. I was actually working, but my best time ever on a 5K was 32:04, and I was actually walking, not running.
Yeah, that sounds like a sleep number, like you were sleeping. All right, so Leighton, here we go. The optics of this at a time when organized sport can't get a green light, can't get a sanction. The Premier League, with almost $100 million in sponsorship in the kitty, can't get the green light, and yet amid all this, Sagicor Sigma, and this is no criticism of Sagicor because they asked and they were granted approval, so it's not their fault. Amid all this, a road race through the streets of the corporate area on the weekend?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a complex issue made so by the government's waffling on how they're managing sports. I think Sagicor would have received approval to have this event for some time now before these spikes were going on. But what is frustrating a lot of the members of the public, I believe, is what I believe to be a complete overcautious approach to the resumption of sports, especially sports like track and field, because with football, George, the teams have to train together. They're a community. It's a team construct. But track and field, I don't see, many people don't see, and I'm included in those, who don't see a reason why, the Velocity Fest meets can't be resumed for this year, especially with the Olympics coming up and we have so many athletes preparing for the Olympic Games. This is what I think has driven a lot of the frustration for members of the public when an event like the Sagicor is allowed to go on, but then these other events are being locked down for national security and health issues, yes. But I get it, but you get the sense that there is it's not equally yoked in terms of how the approach to the respective sports are, and I think that's driving a lot of the frustration.
But here's the thing, Leighton. If I were the government, clearly I'd be out doing some communication today because public relations is needed now more than ever. But they've chosen to stay silent.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be good, from your experience with the government, to come out now and say, well, this corporate run is the first act in sports being reopened, because we've seen communication from the Ministry of Sport in recent times saying that stakeholders have been met with, that plans are being reviewed, and that pretty soon an announcement will be made. So it's not like the environment is not anticipating a big announcement. So isn't it convenient for them to have sought to spun it this way rather than to be maintaining radio silence?
Yeah, absolutely, George. You see, one of the things that I find challenging, and it's with respective governments of this country over the years, they have chosen to remain silent when they should be more forthcoming with members of the public, especially as it relates to matters of public interest. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. They should have said something here either prior to or immediately after the Sigma Run to explain why this event was allowed to go ahead. Now it leaves the situation open to speculation. And of course, with the political environment the way it is in Jamaica, you're going to have speculation that ranges from, the rational to the absurd. And this is what the issue is right now. We're actually discussing this.
Speaking about organized football, Leighton, we know very well what we have an interest in the National Premier League. We know the lengths that the organizers have gone through to convince the government that the environment is safe for the resumption of that activity. I noticed you said that based on your information, the organizers may have gotten approval for this event before recent spikes. And I'm surprised by that, because to get this approval, you need to go through the Ministry of Sport. Then, more importantly, you need to go to the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And then, even after those two ministries have given you the rubber stamp of approval, you need to go to the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, whose Director General will then give the final stamp of approval. So are you saying, based on your best information, these organizers got what no other sporting organized body have managed to do, and is to get the 3 approvals from the 3 critical parts of government to have their activity underway?
No, well, the thing is, I think the approval came before that system was put in place. If you remember, we had Brenner Williams promoting the Sagicor Run from late last year. So I'm thinking that, and again, it goes back again to the confusion that about why and how and why you get approval. Because if this was approved from, say, December last year, I don't know when it was, I'm just assuming here, then wasn't it up for review given the change in the protocols that were put in place for the resumption of sports? So it makes you wonder then what happened, why this approval for the Sagicor Run was not reviewed under the current system that was set up recently, where you have to go through all of these the different divisions to get approval, as opposed to whether or not it was then allowed to carry over from when it was approved, and there were none of these restrictions imposed on the resumption of sports in Jamaica. So those are a lot of the questions that we're still asking, Because then, as you said before, and we just spoke about, there was no communication to say what the actual situation was.
Leighton, just one thing before we leave you. Of course, based on what we saw, and a lot of the tweets, and the retweets were talking about some of the athletes not wearing masks. Personally, would you have taken part in the Sagicor Run? Based on what you saw?
No, because it's too big for me, first of all. But the thing about it is that you're right. If these are the protocols that are obtained, wearing masks, social distancing, there are a lot of argument to be made about people feeling uncomfortable doing strenuous exercises such as running, wearing a mask. If that's the case, then it does put others at risk. Then why do you then allow it to go ahead when you have these new protocols in place? There are a lot of unanswered questions, and again, it goes back again to leaving people to speculate as opposed to outlining exactly why this was allowed to happen, and under what circumstances was the Sagicor Run allowed to go ahead. I mean, Sagicor said all of the protocols were observed. Absolutely, but for that very same reason, there are other sporting events that could be allowed to resume as well.
Definitely, Leighton. I think you summarized it well when you said so many unanswered questions. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us. I'll see you very soon.
Okay, take it easy, Mario. Bye, George.
Thanks.
Yep.
Of course, Leighton Levy there, our senior writer at SportsMax.tv. So, George and Lance, I listened to Leighton talk, and, George, you were spot on when you were explaining that, the government, it would have been better if they came out and, of course, said something about what's taking place as opposed to being radio silent. And I feel like sometimes when people are elected, they forget it's the people that put you there, and we have a right to ask a question, and you have a right to respond to us as well. And I see nothing wrong in all these tweets and whatnot, especially because, one, there are so many sporting events. Even training is unable to happen. We had Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price coming to the forefront and, of course, saying, she wants to start back training. They want to get ready. So, a lot of questions coming to the forefront, and I feel like, as Leighton said, so many unanswered questions.
Yep. Well, the opposition spokesperson on sport has just responded to me to say that I can give her a call back, and I certainly do when I get off air.
Good job.
Yeah, the thing is this, though. The funny thing, just before we go, the communications people at the office of the Prime Minister, who were in this business before us, they would have been asking the same situation if they were still news people. Now that they are not news people anymore, they get upset when we ask these questions and push because they're saying we're pressuring them.
We will ask.
I cannot understand for the life of me.
It's our job to ask.
Yeah.
We'll ask. You cannot answer. We'll still ask. Let's go to break.